Now I'm going to do something kind of fun today. At least it's something that I like to do. Mike Marchakos recommended a book that I'd never heard of. It was The International Guide to Trout Flies by Bob Church, published over in the UK in 1987. It's not a hard book to find. You can find used copies out there on Amazon for about $8 or $10. But it's quite an interesting book, and certainly if you like learning about patterns from overseas. There are over 400 flies in it, not much history, but really good pictures and recipes for all of them. And the first one that caught my attention, it's called the Priest. Now this is not a forgotten fly, at least how it's typically tied as a wet fly, but Bob Church has it tied as a dry fly in here. And he does mention that it was traditionally tied as a wet fly, but it's had somewhat of a resurgence tied as a dry fly, at least in the 1980s when he put it in his book. Now there are no advanced tactics or tricks to tie this thing, but what you can take away from this video is that there shouldn't be any hard and fast rules when it comes to fly tying. If you see a wet fly that you think would make a pretty effective or fun to tie as a dry fly, then go for it. Or vice versa, if you see a dry fly that you think would make a good wet, or either fly that would make a fun streamer. Knock yourself out, just have fun. I mean, within reason, of course. If you tried to turn an elk hair caddis into a streamer, it would probably just look like some kind of weird muddler minnow. But my overall point is, don't be afraid to experiment. Play around with different styles and designs, but most of all, just keep having fun. So there it is in the vise, the Priest, but not your typical Priest, which is normally a wet fly. This one is tied as a dry fly. So a little bit unconventional here. I'm going to tie it on a size 12 standard length barbless dry fly hook. And I have stepped my thread down a little bit. This is a 12/0, so it's a little thinner than my standard 70 denier. Could probably get away with 70 denier, but we'll see if we can make this one work. And the tail on this, just a couple little slips of red duck quill. Now, you could probably get away with just one. And I don't spend a whole lot of time or effort trying to get them perfect or, you know, concave sides together or matching pairs or anything like that. It's a tail. And I think that's going to be fine right there. And it's kind of long, I'd say almost a body length. Let's just catch this on, make sure it's coming off the top and the back like we want, or at least close enough, and watch the point of my hook there. I'm just going to go ahead and bury these in up here to where we're going to stop the body. Okay, I think that's going to be fine. They're a little bit askew right there, but that's okay. Now the next thing I want to catch in, it's a wire rib. And I know a lot of you think it's heresy to put wire on a dry fly, but this stuff, this extra small, it probably doesn't add any more weight than a few extra thread wraps. It's really not much to it. So we're going to catch this in back here, and I keep hitting the point of my hook. Just be careful, don't do what I'm doing here. Take it back up front, and I want to catch you in the body. Flat Mylar tinsel, this is size 14. I want the silver side showing, so I'm going to catch it in with the silver side toward the hook. Okay, when you get your thread back up front, just go ahead and wrap this. One wrap right in front of the other. Don't try to overlap them, but if you end up with a little bit of black showing in between each wrap, I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, unless you're making an Instagram fly. If you're making a fishing fly, a little bit of black there isn't going to be a big deal at all. You see that? Not perfect, but my flies rarely are. Now let's go ahead and counter wrap this rib. 4 or 5 wraps will get us up front. And if you have a little sharp nub right there, just a couple of extra loose wraps to bury that. Now for the dry fly hackle. And if you got a badger, that would keep with the original wet fly version, but if not, a grizzly is close enough. So let's just pull that around till we get to the right length. I think that's going to work right there. And I've got my thread a little bit farther back. I'm going to heavily hackle this thing. So I'm going to catch this dry fly hackle in just a little bit farther back than I would say if I was doing a standard Catskill style fly. Okay, I think that's fine. I got a little bit twisted in there, but I think we're going to be okay. And this is why this thin thread might have been a mistake. I haven't nicked it on the point of the hook, but I've got a little bit, it looks a little bit frayed right there, and I think that was just because, just from that wire and that tinsel body. So let's go ahead and wrap this up in several wraps. I mean, 5, 6 wraps if you can get them. Okay, let's catch this off. And before I snip this excess tip, I'm just going to try and pull everything back a little bit and make some room for my head and whip finish up here. Now let's just clean it up a little bit. Got a couple of fibers going forward. I think I must have trapped when doing this head. Just snip or pluck those out if you want. I think we've got enough room there for some head cement. And there you go, a Priest dry fly. Pretty nifty looking pattern now. I think you could tie this in all kinds of different combinations with different hackles or maybe a different colored tail. But yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty decent attractor dry fly. So I appreciate you watching, everybody. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.